Dum, 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 dum. Yes, here we are. Hello, hello. Good afternoon, y'all. Thank you for joining us. And today we're going to talk about plantar fasciitis. We're going to talk about why it happens, exactly what it is, and some things that you can do from the comfort of your own home to help with that pain. All right. So I hope that you found today very valuable. We're going to learn a lot of things. So excited. If you have any questions that you want to ask in regards to just plantar fasciitis, maybe some specific questions from you, feel free to drop it in the comments and I will check them near the end. All right. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this term plantar fasciitis. You've probably even been diagnosed with it yourself, and maybe it's never healed and it's been a chronic issue for you for months, years even. What exactly is plantar fasciitis? Plantar fasciitis is the inflammation of the tissue on the bottom of our foot, which is called our plantar fascia. It attaches, I don't know if you can see my heel without me like dying, but it attaches from the heel, which is most of the places where you point at when you're like, it hurts here. It attaches from the heel and goes all to the rest of our toes. So it actually covers a good range of that bottom of our foot. So when that is inflamed, that's what we get the itis, inflammation of the plantar fascia. It tends to bother us the most after long periods of not doing anything. So which is why, or long periods of inactivity is a better term. So when you're waking up in the morning, right, the first step out of the bed is some of the most painful steps throughout the day. And that's because for those 8 hours, we haven't been moving our foot, right? So that first step onto that plantar fascia that's already inflamed hurts like hell. Afterwards, also, if you're sitting for long periods of time and then you go to stand up and take that first step, that is something that tends to bother it too. So, but you notice that first step hurts like hell, and kind of throughout the day, it starts to loosen up. So I want to show you and tell you why plantar fasciitis even exists and why you probably have it. There's so many reasons as to why you can be experiencing plantar fasciitis. Some of you have probably heard or experienced bone spurs, right? You say, oh, I have a heel spur or a bone spur, so that's why I have plantar fasciitis, which isn't incorrect. That's definitely possible. But have you still tried other things? Have you tried strengthening the bottom of your foot? Have you tried working on that plantar fascia and seeing how much of it you can relieve, you know? Something else that is super common is you probably hear about tight calves, right? So my tight calves are what's causing my plantar fascia. Very true. The back of our calf goes down into our Achilles, which is that thin muscle at the back, right? Ligament at the back. So our calf comes down into our Achilles, which then wraps around our heel into the back of that heel, the bottom of the foot, right there where that plantar fascia starts and where most people point at for their pain. So if you are experiencing tight calves, it's going to pull from somewhere. We got to get out of the idea of segmenting the body so much. Everything is connected. If we were to say we had a tight trap, right? So our trap is tight, the top of our shoulders. Would that be the only thing that's tight? Definitely not. It would affect your neck. You would possibly get some headaches. You may feel stiff in your upper back. It may even cause an ache in your low back. So if something is tight somewhere else, it's to your calf. If your calf is tight, it has the pull from somewhere. It's just not going to be tight here. So either we're going to have some tightness in our hamstrings or it's going to pull from the bottom of our foot. So having tight calves definitely causes that. But I'm going to take it a step further. Those who cannot touch your toes, one of the first things I have clients do when I see them is have them bend over and touch their toes. And I definitely get comments like, hold on 2 seconds. Oh, sorry. So sorry about that, guys. That was wifey's phone ringing. But anyway, so I'm going to take it a step further and we're going to talk about hamstrings. So what if you are having tight hamstrings? Most people tell me that they can't touch their toes and they haven't been able to do it for a while. But their excuse is always, oh, I have tight hips, or I'm just not being able to do that. That's not okay. Your chronically tight hamstrings could definitely be the cause of your plantar fasciitis. So for those who are experiencing plantar fasciitis, I got one question for you. Can you touch your toes? Because if you cannot, then that's where we need to start. Our musculature from the bottom of our foot comes up our leg, up that hamstring, up the butt and back and all the way up. So if we're having tightness or tension somewhere along that fascial line, it's going to pull from somewhere. So if you have chronically tight hamstrings, why wouldn't it pull from the bottom of your foot? So that's something that you're going to address. And I'll show you later on some movements to help lengthen those chronically tight hamstrings, which overall are going to help your plantar fascia. Next thing, your feet. Most people have flat feet. Like myself, I definitely have flat feet, wide feet. It's a bitch at times to find the best shoes, except now I have Vivo barefoots and I love them. So I totally recommend them. But if you have flat feet like myself, wide feet, then our plantar fascia isn't as active as we need it to be. So I don't feel as stable on the ground sometimes, right? So me, myself personally, I have been strengthening and stabilizing the bottom of my foot. So I've been creating as much as I can of an arch, which means I have to engage my plantar fasciitis. My plantar fascia. So if you have flat feet, if you have high arches, that plantar fascia is here, right? At the bottom of our hip. So if this is our heel and these are our toes, we're constantly in this high arch, which means that plantar fascia is tight and compressed even more. So what do you think happens when it becomes inflamed, right? It's already halfway there. So that leads to that first step out of the bed being excruciatingly painful. And sometimes at the end of the day, your foot hurting too. So how your feet are definitely plays a huge role. And I'm going to show you later some things that we can do with the feet that'll help not only mobilize that plantar fascia, but also start to strengthen it as well. Since we're talking about feet, let's go ahead and slide into your shoes. Now, women, I know, well, the world is open back up, so we've kind of been going out, right? How many of you are wearing heels? We can talk on the subject all day about how bad heels are for your feet. Like, I know they look good. I know they look sexy, but over time, your feet are affected so badly by these heels. So think about what we just talked about at high arches. Heels, especially stilettos, are made to put your foot in an angle, and it's also made to create more of that arch. So that plantar fascia is constantly in more compression or more tightness being in that foot, being in that shoe. Not only heels, we can move away from heels and also go to our everyday sneakers, tennis shoes, whatever you may call them, right? We have shoes that are made more narrow, which I'm recently learning about the last couple of years, that my flat feet and wide feet don't fit in certain shoes because of the narrowness. I never understood why my shoes wouldn't last, why I would feel like I would be busting out the side of my shoes. And it's because my flat feet just, first of all, weren't strong enough, didn't have as much support on their own. And then I would get into these narrow shoes. So the shoes that you wear play a huge role. We got to look at, do you have flat feet? Are your feet wide? Where are your arches? If we already have high arches and then we get those shoes that have, I don't even know, a little bit of cushion on it, we're putting our foot even higher in the air. That's causing more of a pulling on that plantar fascia. So why would we do that? We got to pay attention to the type of feet that you have and what shoes best work for those. Something that is pretty common that I don't think a lot of people tell you about is that our shoes are made differently, beyond the sense of like what's narrow, what's wide. But at the bottom of our shoe, and I'll show you this. So if you look at how this shoe is made, you see how it kind of goes straight up in an angle, right? I wish I had another example because not all shoes come up in this angle. Some go straight, some actually come out and curve even more, but we never look at the pattern at the bottom of our shoe. So if our feet don't, I know you've seen people's feet who kind of naturally have a curve, right? That's okay. We need to make sure that their shoes match their feet. So for some of us, we have some shoes that go straight. We have some shoes that kind of come up at an angle like this. And then we have others that even curve more. So I challenge you to pick a couple of your shoes and see if you can find the differences between what shoes are going straight up and which ones kind of go at an angle. And you may notice that why certain shoes that you wear bother your feet more than others. All right. So we got to pay attention to the footwear. Last but not least, for my active people, specifically my runners. I'm working with a lot of runners right now. One who's training for the CIM, another one who's doing some tries. And I have a lot of women who are just running is just their outlet, right? But even if you're not doing it competitively, you need to keep up with your mileage. If you're running, say this week you ran 15 miles, and then the next week you're running 30 or 35, that drastic increase in your mileage is a huge cause of plantar fascia that you're feeling in your feet. we have to gradually train and gradually build up to certain mileages. So if you take in consideration that you got new shoes, you went and got some new running shoes, which is great, kudos, but then you also increased your mileage by double or more for that next week. Now we got 2 causes that are causing that pain in the bottom of that foot. So make sure that you're paying attention and keeping track of how many miles you're putting in for that week. All right, now we're going to go move next to the movements. I'm going to give you some movements today that are going to help that plantar fasciitis. These are all things that you can do at your house, all right? First thing, let me make sure that y'all can see me. I'm gonna need the wall a little bit, so I'm gonna turn a bit. All right, bet. So this first one, let me ask, hold on, let me check it out. Yes, Estelle, yes. I hate shoes. For those who think people that walk around barefoot are weird, I'm one of those. I literally walk to my mailbox every day, no shoes on. I don't know if it's a country thing, but also my feet have never felt comfortable in shoes, even though I have flat and barely no arches. It definitely plays a huge role in how your feet are set up and what shoes you put on. Okay, so first move we're gonna do, you're gonna need a wall. Now, some of you are probably familiar with the typical calf stretch, right? Where you put your whole foot up against that wall and you come in closer and you're feeling that stretch in your calf. We're going to take it a little bit further, and now instead of putting our whole foot on the wall, we're only going to put our toes. But what's important to me is that we kind of make it in a walking motion, okay? I'm all about functional movement. So yes, we may focus on moving and getting one area stabilized as much as we can, but after that, we got to move other shit with it, or else we're going to keep segmenting our body, and we have to stop doing that because everything works together, okay? So getting away from a wall enough that you can step into that wall and leave your toes on there. Hold that for like 3 to 5 seconds and then come back. With your toes on the wall, you should feel a good lengthening and a good stretch in that plantar fascia in the bottom of your foot, all right? So I'm gonna do about 5 of those. About 5 to 10 of those, and let me know how that foot feels afterwards, okay? Before we get that, let me back up real quick. Ice versus heat when it comes to this plantar fasciitis. For those who've seen a couple things on my page, I had talked about how I'm always going to choose heat and movement over ice. And the reason is because think about what happens after you ice something. Ice does what it's supposed to do, right? So it numbs that area. It also stops blood flow from getting to that area. And you don't feel anything, which is cool. But if you really want something to heal and speed up through that recovery process, it has to get blood in there. It has to get the good shit in and the bad shit out. In order to do that, adding heat can help, and also adding movement. So if you are someone who the pain in the bottom of that foot is so bad that you feel like you can't, it's just too much, which is okay for you to stretch that out without feeling so much pain, for you, I recommend doing ice. But this is how we're going to do the ice. I suggest you get a water bottle, put it in the freezer, take that water bottle out, and I want you to roll that frozen water bottle on the bottom of your foot for like 60 seconds, right? So where you feel like I'm feeling good, my foot's kind of numb, I don't feel pain, I can do this, right? So after you roll your foot out, then I want you to move to movements like this, because we're definitely going to end with movement. I will never say I want you to ice and lift something up. I will never say I want you to ice and not move. So we can ice it and we can numb it up, but baby, we're going to go move it too. All right. So make sure if this is something that's super painful for you, that you put ice on it by rolling it out, and then you go to moves like this. So that first one was toes against the wall. Okay. The next one, I'm going to use this because I don't have a stair. It's a little bit higher, but if you have some stairs in your home, that's where I would suggest you do this, okay? So we would step up on that stair. Our goal is to get our heel below our toes, okay? So we're up here and we're gonna come down. Make sure you have this up, make sure you have your hand against the wall just to keep holding you steady and balanced. Once we get down, we'll hold it down for 3 to 5 seconds and then come back up. So this is something that's helping lengthen those calves. And depending how flexible you are, you may can get some up in the bottom of that hamstring too. So as we talked about earlier, how tight calves and hamstrings could be an issue, this is when we can help lengthen out that calf. Let me see if y'all have any questions. Yes, forget them shoes. Who needs shoes? Totally agree. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do, you're gonna need a towel. So I use a towel and I kind of fold it up maybe twice on one end, okay? The purpose of this is because our toes are gonna go up on that towel. As I mentioned, that plantar fascia attaches from that heel all the way down to our toes, right? And here we're focusing a lot on that big toe. So if tightening that plantar fascia means that our big toe, our toes are trying to come in towards that heel, I want to open it up as much as I can. So my goal is to get more extension in that big toe. And this towel is going to help me do that. So with that towel rolled up, which you can also change to your tolerance. Mine is not that high. You're going to put your toes on that towel. Actually, let me roll it up a little bit more just so y'all can see better. So my toes are on that towel. The rest of my foot is off. I'm up against a wall. We're going to make that similar motion with the calf raise. So we're going to come up. You may feel even more of a stretch or lengthen in that plantar fascia because my toe is extended. And then you're going to come down on that one leg. So I push up with 2, toes up and down. I would give me 10 of these. And let me know how that feels, okay? I'm really big on adding in some type of toe extension because most of the time our big toe isn't as flexible as we want it to be. And that causes a lot of issues on the bottom of our foot. Okay, so 2 more things, all right? And then we're done. We are going to do what's called a toe slider. In this position, you want to have something to lean on. So whether that's a chair, a bench, whatever it may be. If you have, I would suggest you need something to slide, whether that's usually a towel underneath your foot or if you have a hardwood floor, things like that. But our big focus is on our big toe. So we're down in that position, and what I want to happen is I want my big toe sliding back and forth. Keeping my back straight, everything tight. Don't let everything drop just because we're focusing on here. We talk about full body movements, right? So our focus is that toe is on the ground in extension, and I'm sliding it back as well as using my glutes to do so. So I like those. Generally, I start with those when someone comes in with plantar fascia. We start with a good chunk of those, and toe sliders are most of the time always in that first set of exercises. Okay, last but not least, mentioned earlier about having chronic hamstrings and how that can be causing a pulling in your calf. So I'm going to show you how we can do a hip hinge and how hip hinging can help actually lengthen those calves. I like this a lot better than like a typical hamstring stretch, laying on your back, lifting your leg, which is nothing bad about, but if I can load something and lengthen it, I'm always going to choose that one. So in this hinging position, hips about shoulder width apart, our knees are slightly bent. What I don't want to see is an arch in our back. So take one hand, put it in our stomach, one hand on our low back. Now, some of you may have what I call booty butt, as in we have a little arch here, look like we're about to go to the club, right? So some of us may have here, some of us may have like a little flat butt, or we kind of up in here. For you, I want you to find neutral, okay? And our back should remain in that position, flat that entire time. So from here, I want to be pushing my hips back. But you see, as I push my hips back, my back is still flat. It's in that same position. And coming back up, push back again. You should feel that your back has not dropped in like this or arched. It should be that same position from standing up. Put your hands on your hips. When you come down, you should also feel a lengthening in that hamstring. Hip hinging is one of my favorite movements. Everyone should learn how to hip hinge. So anytime I can throw that into an exercise plan, I definitely will, especially when it comes to lengthening those chronically tight hamstrings. So we went over toes against the wall. We went over calf raises on a stair. We also used that towel to elevate and back down. We went over toe sliders. And then last but not least, we went over hip hinges. I hope that you take some of these exercises and follow up with them. Different people have plantar fasciitis for different reasons. And because we haven't gone through an assessment, it's your responsibility to go through these movements and see which one your body agrees with the most. If you do one and you're like, nope, that made it worse. Actually, I didn't like that. Well, try something else, because you're going to find something that works. And that's the ones I want you to stick to for a minute to see how it affects your plantar fascia. I hope you guys found this very valuable. I hate when people just brush past their plantar fascia like, oh, I've been having this fasciitis for a while. I went and I got shockwave therapy. I went and I got stuff shot, that freaking steroid injection in there. And it worked for a couple months, but now it's back. That's because we're not hitting the underlying cause. Yes, you went and you did something to numb here, but we still can't do this. So you damn right it's going to come back. If you are someone who wants to finally deal with your issues, learn how to take care of your body and the things that you can do for yourself, I got you. And I'm here for you when you are ready for it, okay? Let me see if we have any questions. No question. Thank y'all so much for joining me today. I hope that y'all learned a lot of information. I feel like it was kind of long-winded, but I want to educate you so much on the things that you can do for your feet. Your feet are so important. All right, so next week, I'll be going live again next Friday, and we've talked so much about, I may just keep going with the hamstrings, and we're going to talk about why you can't touch your toes. So if you're one of those that I semi-called out, it's all out of love, but we're going to talk about some reasons as why you can't touch your toes and how we can get some things that it's possible I can have you touching your toes by the end of that live, all right? So thank you so much for joining me on your day. I'll talk to y'all soon.